At a high school in the state of Maine, USA, there was a 7-year-old Japanese girl named Kawana Natsuki. That day, when the bell rang to signal recess, the hallway buzzed with laughter and chatter. Natsuki stood quietly in front of her locker. Her fingers trembled, but not out of fear. It was because she was holding back a strength she knew could bring down the person in front of her with just a single strike. But she did not fight back. Deep in her mind, a promise to her late father still echoed. Your strength is not meant to hurt others. Karate is for protection. Until you understand that, never use it to hit anyone. 3 months earlier, Natsuki's father had died in an accident. He was the only family she had left. Before his last breath, he had held her hand tightly and told her those words. Immediately after the funeral, Natsuki left Japan with an old suitcase, a few changes of clothes, and some small keepsakes, moving to the U.S. to live with distant relatives. On her first day at Lincoln High School, she carefully arranged her new books in her locker, still holding a small hope, the hope of finding new friends, a fresh start. But within just a few days, reality had cruelly crushed that hope. Whispered taunts rang behind her. That girl's always apologizing. She never says anything. In class, no one wanted to sit near her. During group work, she was left out. Day by day, the feeling of isolation grew stronger. The ringleader of the bullying was David, a tall, muscular boy who saw himself as the boss of the class. One morning, while Natsuki was opening her locker, David and a few friends came up. "Hey, Asian girl, can't even look me in the eye?" he sneered. Before she could react, he shoved her hard on the shoulder. Her body hit the wall, her backpack fell to the ground, and books scattered everywhere. Everyone around just watched. No one stepped forward. Natsuki bent down to pick up a pen, but as soon as her fingers touched it, the plastic pen cracked with a sharp snap. She quickly pulled her hand back and took a deep breath. It wasn't fear, it was restraint. That afternoon, Natsuki went to a small street where there was a karate dojo called Matsukaze. The wooden sign was old, the paint peeling, but when she opened the door, the familiar smell of tatami mats filled her nose, making her feel like she was back home. She changed into her gi and began to practice. Every movement of her kata was powerful, decisive, and precise, rare for a high school student. A voice spoke up. "You're really strong. Why don't you fight back against David?" Natsuki turned. It was Sophia, a girl with brown hair tied up high and sparkling blue eyes, also a student at the school. "Karate isn't for hitting people," Natsuki answered briefly. Sophia looked at her for a long moment, then smiled faintly. She didn't argue further, but from that day on, Sophia began to pay more attention to Natsuki. Sometimes Sophia would lend Natsuki her textbook when she saw hers had been damaged. Once, during lunch, she sat next to her, bringing a light smile to push away the disapproving glances from other tables. Gradually, the two girls became close friends. Sophia laughed when she saw Natsuki's Japanese lunchbox with tiny octopus-shaped sausages. "Oh my God, this is adorable." "It's normal in Japan," Natsuki said shyly. That laugh warmed Natsuki's heart, but those peaceful days didn't last long. One Thursday afternoon, Natsuki waited for Sophia at the park as usual. But Sophia arrived late, her eyes red and traces of tears still on her shoulders. On the ground lay torn pages scattered everywhere. Natsuki bent down to pick them up and saw they were Sophia's science notes, scribbled over with thick black ink and a familiar signature, David. "I ripped them myself," Sophia said quickly, her voice trembling. But Natsuki already understood. Sophia had been targeted simply for being her friend. Her father's words echoed again. "Strength is for protection." "Wait here," Natsuki said, standing up. "What are you going to do?" Sophia asked anxiously. "Clean something up." In the cafeteria, David and his friends were eating noisily. Natsuki walked straight toward them, her voice clear. "What did you do to Sophia?" David looked up and laughed. "She wouldn't help mess up your books, so I taught her a lesson." Laughter erupted around him, and that was the last straw. David lunged, aiming to grab her collar, but Natsuki slid to the side, touched his wrist lightly, and turned her body. Instantly, he lost balance and fell to the floor. Another boy charged. She deflected his punch and redirected him forward, making him stumble past her. Not a single offensive strike, just smooth, precise movements, and one by one, the group was brought down without laying a hand on her. David roared, grabbing a chair to swing down. Natsuki stepped in close, supporting under his wrists and locking the angle of force. The chair clattered to the floor. "Enough," she said, her eyes holding no hatred, only sadness. The cafeteria doors opened. Sophia entered, holding the torn notebook. "Teachers, they're the bullies." Natsuki only defended herself. Phone notification sounds went off all around. Another student held up his phone, showing a live stream of David bragging about ruining Sophia's notes and footage of Natsuki skillfully neutralizing the bullies. Hundreds were watching live. The truth was undeniable. David and his gang were suspended long-term. Natsuki faced no punishment, recognized for legitimate self-defense. In the days after, many classmates came to apologize, some shyly saying, "Sorry for not helping you." Natsuki smiled. "It's okay. Thanks for saying that." From then on, she smiled more often. One afternoon at the dojo, Sophia said, "Sorry for making you break your promise to your father." Natsuki shook her head. I didn't break it. My father taught me to use my strength to protect. Today, I did exactly that." "Then, spar with me?" This time, no holding back. Sophia grinned. "I've been waiting for you to say that," Natsuki replied. The two tightened their belts, bowed, and began training under the setting Sunday. The day Natsuki understood that protection meant using her strength in the right way was also the day she stopped fearing herself. And for the first time, she stepped toward a future where she was no longer alone. Natsuki walked quickly toward her locker. She opened the door and placed her books neatly inside, as if arranging everything perfectly could somehow bring peace to her mind. But the moment her fingers touched a black fountain pen, images from the past suddenly flooded in. She saw herself standing on the polished wooden floor of a dojo in Japan. The scent of wood and sweat mingled in the air. The sound of someone's ragged breathing echoed through the room. Natsuki turned her head and saw Mai, her closest friend, clutching her chest, collapsed on the floor, her face twisted in pain. That day, during a practice session before the national tournament, Natsuki had unintentionally used too much strength in a counterattack. That single strike, just once, had sent Mai to the hospital and forced her to miss the tournament she had dreamed of for years. The image of Mai gasping for breath, her sweat mingling with tears, had clung to Natsuki's mind ever since, like an unshakable curse. That night, her father entered her room. He wasn't angry, but his gaze was stern. "Natsuki, this strength is not meant to hurt others. Karate is to protect what is most important. Until you truly understand that, you must never use it to attack anyone." All she could do was lower her head and whisper, "Yes." 3 months later, her father passed away in an unexpected accident. That promise became an invisible chain binding Natsuki. Back in the present, Natsuki looked at the pen in her hand. A thin crack ran along its barrel caused by her unconscious grip, as she remembered the past. She let out a quiet sigh, placed the pen inside the locker, and closed it. No matter the insults or shoves, she would never fight back. Because for Natsuki, if she ever let that strength loose, the consequences could be irreversible. The school bell rang, like a release. Without looking at anyone, Natsuki hugged her bag and quickly left the school, crossing the quiet streets of the small town. She passed a row of old shops, neon signs flickering, and the monotone voice of a radio weather report drifting out into the evening air. Turning into a narrow alley, she saw a faded wooden sign ahead, Matsukaze Karate Dojo. She stopped, took a deep breath, and slid the door open. The familiar scent of tatami filled the air warm, like her father's embrace long ago. No school noise, no prying eyes, only stillness and steady breathing. Natsuki changed into her white karate gi and tied her belt neatly. When she stepped into the center of the training floor, her shoulders were straight. Her gaze focused a completely different person from the bowed, silent girl that morning. She began her kata, each movement flowing like water yet carrying a hidden strength. The sound of fabric cutting through the air mixed with the rhythm of her footsteps on the tatami, like a meditative song. With every motion, Natsuki felt her body steady, powerful, but still wrapped in a thin mist of memory. Every time she clenched her fists, Mai's pained face flickered in her mind, pulling her spirit down. From the corner of the room, a pair of eyes watched silently. It was Sophia, an American girl from her school, her brown hair tied high, her blue eyes bright. She had seen Natsuki at school quietly enduring, never fighting back. But now, before her, was someone entirely different. Swift, strong, confident, carrying a fire that seemed untouchable. Sophia whispered to herself, "Who is she really?" With the final ki echoing in the room, Natsuki stood tall, bowed, her breathing steady, though sweat dotted her forehead. She turned to leave, but a voice called from behind. Sophia. Hey, you." Natsuki paused, then turned. Sophia was walking toward her, removing her training gloves, her bright blue eyes sharp with curiosity. Sophia smiling slightly, studying her. "I have to say, what you just did was incredible. It was like watching a martial arts movie." Natsuki hesitated, lowered her gaze. "Natsuki. Thank you." Sophia crossed her arms, tilting her head. "But there's something I don't get. At school, you let them bully you. You could take them down in seconds, couldn't you?" Natsuki's eyes wavered, her hand tightening slightly. After a long pause, she replied softly, "Natsuki, I don't want to use my strength to hurt anyone." Sophia frowned, then gave a small laugh, not mocking, but tinged with disbelief. "Are you serious? Around here, if you don't fight back, they'll never stop." Natsuki stayed silent, her eyes fixed on the tatami. Sophia exhaled, shook her head, but a glimmer flashed in her eyes, part curiosity, part challenge. She stepped back toward the changing room, but before disappearing, she looked back. "I don't know what it is you're trying to protect, but maybe one day you'll have to change." Natsuki stood still, watching Sophia's back fade behind the door. Inside her, something stirred a ripple she hadn't felt in a long time, as if someone had just... Afternoon history class. Pale golden light from the windows spilled into the room, stretching across neat rows of desks. Natsuki sat at the very back, quietly opening her textbook. The moment she turned the page, she froze. Across the clean printed lines, thick black marker scrawls covered the paper crude drawings, clumsy mocking words. The whole book, not a single page untouched. Natsuki's fingers tightened on the book's edge. A brief silence, then she slowly closed it. No complaints, no glances toward anyone. At the next desk, Sophia saw everything. She swallowed hard, her eyes wavering. A long pause, then Sophia slid her own history book across. "Sophia, softly. Use mine. I already know it all." Natsuki looked up, slightly surprised. Natsuki. But the test is coming up? Sophia gave a faint smile, hiding her awkwardness. It's fine. Let's just say, I'm sharing with a classmate. Natsuki looked at the pristine book, then at Sophia. In those blue eyes, for the first time, she didn't see curiosity or pity, but something warmer, a quiet invitation to connect. She gave a small nod, accepting the book. Natsuki. Very softly. Thank you. Sophia didn't reply, just smiled and turned back to the lesson. But inside, she felt a strange sense of relief, like she had just crossed a line within herself. And Natsuki, for the first time in weeks, felt her heart grow warm. A small flame had been lit in the cold of isolation. The autumn sports field. A light breeze carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass. The sound of students' running shoes filled the air, but in one corner, Natsuki sat alone. She sat on a mat, head down, stretching in steady, deliberate movements, eyes not meeting anyone's second. From the edge of the field, Sophia stood gripping her hair tie. She spotted Natsuki from afar. A voice in her head whispered, What if you get dragged into trouble again? But then, the image of the ruined book from the other day and Natsuki's quiet, grateful eyes rose to the surface. Sophia took a deep breath and walked straight toward her. Without a word, she plopped down right beside her. Sophia, deliberately curt, "This spot's bigger." Natsuki looked up slightly, surprised. They were less than a hand's width apart. A moment of silence. Sophia began stretching, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Natsuki quietly continued her own exercises, but the corner of her lips trembled, not from fear, but from the unfamiliar feeling of someone willingly sitting next to her. The late autumn sun slanted down, casting two long, parallel shadows across the ground. And in that stillness, Natsuki realized, sometimes, a silent presence can be the warmest way of saying, I'm here. Late afternoon, the orange-red glow of sunset spilled over the low rooftops, dappling the sidewalk with shifting tree shadows. Natsuki had just finished her dojo practice, sweat still beading her forehead, a water bottle in hand. She stood before a vending machine, choosing a cool bottle of mineral water. Behind her, familiar footsteps approached. Sophia appeared, hair tied high, holding a blue sports drink. Sophia, slightly breathless, I thought you'd already left. Natsuki turned, a little surprised. Natsuki. No, I was thirsty. They stood side by side, neither speaking. The only sounds were the wind and the clunk of a drink dropping from the machine. Sophia twisted open her bottle, took a sip, then suddenly spoke. Sophia, quietly. Hey, why don't you fight back against them? Natsuki hesitated, her eyes fixed on the road ahead. After a moment, she replied softly. Natsuki, because I don't want to hurt anyone. Sophia turned to her, brows furrowed. But they don't think like that. They won't stop. Natsuki stayed silent. Sophia did too. But in Sophia's eyes, there was something that looked like anger and helplessness. Finally, Sophia let out a quiet sigh. I'm asking because I used to be like you, except I wasn't strong enough to protect myself. So now, when I see you, I feel both admiration and something that irritates me. Natsuki looked at her, startled, about to say something, but Sophia smiled faintly, as if to brush away the heaviness. Sophia, forget it, let's go. They walked on, side by side, without looking at each other, but between them, an invisible thread had begun to form, fragile, yet stronger than either of them realized. Welcome to revenge drama, where every frame tells a story, and every story touches the heart. Here, you'll find Emotional dramas inspired by real events. Cinematic moments filled with tension, depth, and beauty. Narratives that feel real, pulling you into the world of the characters. Our mission? To bring you stories that not only entertain, but also make you feel the kind that stays with you long after the screen fades to black. If you're ready for moving stories, intense moments, and unforgettable characters, hit subscribe and step into our world.